Everyone knows that property is the big game, and the guest on the show today shows property developers how to do their job. And well, we're in conversation with Ritchie Clapson, director and owner of PropertyCEO. It's so great to have you here with us today.
Yeah, well, pleased to be here. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. And so let's just start off with PropertyCEO. Can you describe it in probably a sentence for me?
Oh, in one sentence, that's difficult for me, but I'll give it a go. Okay, PropertyCEO is a property training company that trains both existing developers to do it better and new people that want to get into it to become small-scale property developers.
Okay, great. So if you can now go into more detail about PropertyCEO, that will be...
Yeah, certainly can. No problem at all. Well, there's two of us here in terms of co-founders, myself and my business partner, Ian Child. We set the business up about 4 or 5 years ago. I'm a chartered structural engineer, been in the property industry now nearly 40 years, award-winning within that industry, and the businesses that I owned were invited by the government to peer review Olympic Stadium, National Aquatics, Velodrome in 2012. We worked on things like Wimbledon retracting roof, as well as lots of other stuff, in Docklands, high-rise, hospitals, hotels, all those sort of things. And alongside that, always been involved with development and developer clients, teaching them to do things better during that time. So that's a little bit about me that came to the business. Ian, who's my business partner, was actually a student of mine, which was quite interesting because I used to train people privately. And at the end of that term, Ian said, "Look, let's start a business together." I mean, his experience is 30 years in corporate leadership. Sorry, that was difficult to say, wasn't it? Corporate leadership, in a large private equity company, particularly involved with marketing and branding and a passion for mindset and those sort of things. And we both retired. He retired out of corporate land. I retired back 12 years ago now. Actually retired, and. Long story short, we decided to get together to start what we said was going to be the most professional property training development company in the country. And that's pretty much what we do. We only do one thing. We only train property development. We don't get involved in anything else in property. There's a lot of other people do that very well. So we just are very bespoke in what we do, and we try to do that to what we believe is the best standard in the industry.
Amazing. I think you're already there. Yeah, and I love the name PropertyCEO. It has a very high recall value. It's very easy to remember and very succinct because, you basically get the essence of what it is just listening to that name. So how did you all come up with it?
Well, that's interesting. And a few people ask us that. A lot of people don't, but we often tell this story. And I'll take you back, actually, to when Ian and I met. I was speaking at an event. Ian, completely unknown to me, was in the audience, came up to me afterwards and said, I found you out. You've been highly recommended as someone that teaches people privately to be property developers. Would you train me? And I said, maybe, because I don't want to work with people I want to work with. And that's very much the ethos here at PropertyCEO. It's about invite only. And then, so we talked a bit, and Ian said, one of the things he said to me, he said, how will you get me credibility as a property developer? And I said, just run it past me again, what you've done. He said, well, run a business unit for the world's largest private equity company, etc., etc. And I said, I won't be able to get you credibility as a property developer then. And he said, well, why not? I said, well, what makes you think you're going to come into my industry that I've been in 40 years, it took me 9 years to get qualified, and you're going to rock up and get credibility within 12 months? That's what I want. I said, well, it doesn't matter what you want, you won't get it. And he sort of looked at me and went, oh. And I said, what I could get you, and this is where it started in this day, back 6 years ago now. I said, what I could get you, I could get you credibility as a property CEO. Okay. Now, at that time, we hadn't even discussed the company, wasn't even in my mind. And he said, what do you mean? And we still use this analogy today, okay? I said, look, a bit like a cabinet minister. There's a lot of shuffling going on at the moment, but forget the current times, as always is. And I said, if you can picture the minister in charge of health, okay, and they're in charge of hospitals, beds, medicines, what do you think they know about that? Maybe not a lot, without getting political, maybe not a lot, okay? And they're not supposed to. Because then maybe they get moved across to defence, and now they're in charge of armies and tanks and guns and soldiers and whatever. Well, what do they know about that? How can they go from health to there? Well, they use their ministerial skills. They actually are the CEO of their departments. That's the skills that these cabinet ministers have, and they'll be chosen for that. And underneath them, they have all the expertise they need in those departments to help them make decisions. I said, that's how you could work. So I'll get you credibility as a CEO of a property company. And that's then when we decided to set up the business together. After Ian's year of training, he said to me, we should start a property training company together. Now, bear in mind, I'd sort of pretty much retired. I was doing bits and pieces of training, and I said, no, thank you. And after several conversations, we said, okay, let's do it. And I remember the day we said, what should we call it? And we both went Property CEO. And we always say to people, we train you. There's a lot of discussion in the industry, if I call it the training industry, about training strategies. And I don't mind that. But what we say is, well, actually, we train you to run a company. It just happens to be a property company. And I think that's the really important thing, that a lot of people don't get, that you have to run a company. And we don't get trained in this country to run companies, not at school, often not at colleges or universities. Very little training is done in running businesses. But I think absolutely, as you say, it tells you what you're doing. You're being the CEO. And of course, there's specific skill sets you need to be a CEO, which is how you get on in this industry.
Okay, great. So I would love to know, is it more about, running the company, or is it more about property? How much of each would it be if you had to assign percentages to both?
Okay, well, in terms of training, I mean, that would probably form, it's a thread that goes through all the training. So I think that's one thing that it's difficult to say, oh, there's 10% of the course on this and 20% on that and so on. I think that'd be very difficult. We have a platform that we train. We train over a 6 to 12 month period, and there are 100 modules, a bit like an open university course. And I could sort of tell you how many modules were specifically on business, but I don't think that would be appropriate. So I would say, if I had to sort of guess that we probably, throughout the thread of this training, probably spend 20-30% of our time talking about business. And then, there's a proportion where we talk about mindset, performance, because we always say there's 3 legs to any stool, and without the 3 legs, the stool falls over. So there is business, there is the property, all the permitted development rights, the industry professionals, all those things you need to understand. But of course, there's mindset, because the biggest problem for people being successful, the thing that gets in their way the most, is themselves. So we have to work on that. So we have performance coaches, mindset performance coaches that work with them. So we have a proportion of our course, but again, it's a thread that runs through. The majority of the actual modules are on property. And of course, you need to understand property. You need to... The thing that we have a process that we teach. It's a bit like I always say, why are Costa's, Subway, McDonald's successful? Because they have a manual. They have a franchise manual. Well, we don't do a franchise, but we have a manual. Every good business is built around a system. And we have what we call 8 pillars. We teach the 8 pillars of property development. One, maybe 2 of those are on business and mindset. But as I say, the thread goes right the way through. And if you learn the manual, you're more likely to be successful. And the important thing is, when you become the CEO of a property company, as in PropertyCEO, which is the way you minimize your risk, because property development is definitely risky. A lot of people look at it and think, I might be interested, but maybe it's too big for me, maybe it's too risky. You minimize your risk by being the CEO, by doing what you need to do. No point a cabinet minister getting down into the cabinet and making decisions on new medicines without advisors. They couldn't do it. But equally, in property, you're not going to be laying the bricks. You're not going to be doing the architectural drawings. You do not need to be a planning consultant or a structural engineer.
So can you tell me a little more about the course? I'd love to know, because you just got into a very brief sort of overview about it. I'd love to get into more details about the course.
Yeah, definitely can. Okay, so I think the first thing that one would say is the interesting thing about property development. There is a huge buzz about it. There has been over quite a number of years, but certainly over the last few years, the way the government is, working and taxing and putting in more legislation into landlords, rightly or wrongly. So there's always an opinion both sides, makes the appetite for building a portfolio through buy-to-lets more challenging for some people. For some it's right, for others it's not. And so there's been a massive interest in people getting into property development, and particularly small scale property development, because I think there's getting a handle on what development is. It's not building big high rises. We might be talking building something between sort of 5 and 20 units, relatively small. And I think then, so the first thing I'd say is that there's a lot of people that want to do it. So one of the things that we always said is, well, we do by invite only. The last thing you want is someone to go, wow, I want to do that. It's going to change my life. Let's go and do it. When the reality is, it's not a good fit for you. Okay. So the first thing we did when we set this business up, we said, well, let's make sure we serve people properly. Okay? If you serve people properly, the business reputation will grow. And we've never had one single complaint on the business, which is great. Never had to give one refund, which is absolutely terrific. Okay. And so what we do is, we first of all have it by invite only. We then have, and I think the fundamental part of the course, we have one program. Okay. It's very simple. There's one program. We take you on a journey, 6 to 12 months. Okay, you can do it in 6 months. We can extend it to 12 to get more support from us. And then that's it. You're educated on everything. There's sort of no parts missing. So the way the course basically works is there are several sort of parts to it. One is education. You need to be educated not only in the world of business, and there's some mindset support, but you need to know what you don't know in property. So you need to know how to source the deals, how to finance the deals, how to create the deals. How do you create a deal out of a building? It's not just finding a building, it's knowing what to do with it. How do you actually appoint the design team? How do you engage with a contractor? How do you run it on budget, on time? Deliver it to the right quality? How do you sell it? So we have a whole load of education. That's delivered, as I just said just a few moments ago, in sort of an open university style. We put it together in that way. It took us a year to actually put the content together. We sort of had to download my many, many years of experience and Ian's experience into bespoke recorded modules, piece it together, structured course on a journey. And we always wanted to. It's interesting that a lot of people scurried around over the last few years, quite rightly so, trying to get their education in whatever industry online. And we set out to be online. We set it out to be online because we felt that adults, generally learn better at their own pace, not in the classroom. And so when you're learning on an open university module style basis, you can do it early in the morning, or you can do it late at night if you're a bit of a night owl. You can put it on double speed if you want. You can slow it down if you want, and you can go back and re-listen to it. And the important thing about property, you have to keep going back. So whilst you do all your education at once, you're going to have to come back at a later date and relearn some of those modules at the back end. So we have about 100 modules that are like open university style online, which the student would go through in the first 8 weeks. Okay, and they're time released. So you can't jump ahead, because most of our students, in fact all of our students, are very entrepreneurial, and they all want to get ahead. Like all of us entrepreneurs, we're impatient. So we steady the ship and we hold them back and we time release it. They then have, as they go through that, they have a series of, want of a better word, homework, which is quite an education for mature people. So we ask them to submit various things, like their branding. We ask them to create a brand and a website, because that's all about getting credibility. Submit it and we assess it. A business plan, we ask them to put a business plan together, comes into our business coach, we critique it, the business coach comes back on the phone. We ask them to talk about their business structure, we guide them and steer them so they can go back to their accountant. We ask them to do a full analysis of a deal end to end on all the modules and templates and spreadsheets that we teach them, submit it, and it goes through a planning consultant, structural engineer, architect, cost consultant, project manager goes back on the phone with them, not about that deal specifically, but about, are they understanding the process? Can we release them, if you like, into the world? As I say, a bit like a university program where we want to assess them before they're released into the real world. And so over those 8 weeks, there's a lot going on in those 8 weeks. They also have direct access to myself and Ian Child, my business partner, in a weekly live Q&A. So they have that opportunity. They have a help desk. And on that first 8 weeks, they've got every single template you could almost imagine you would need. Various sort of offer letters, viewing checklists, analysis spreadsheets. Everything is in there. So you've got a comprehensive, a bit like, as I said, the franchise manual if you were going to buy and set up a Costa Coffee or a Subway sandwich bar. So you've got that complete manual in those 8 weeks. We also have some mindset coaches that work within those 8 weeks, because I can tell you when people get into it, there's a lot of content, as you can imagine, in 100 modules. And a lot of people get a bit of overwhelm. Okay, so we try and unblock those. And every month as well, they have an accountability coach, someone that keeps them on track. So in terms of the first 8 weeks, what you're going to have is, a whole load of other downloads and content. You've got all the templates that you need. You've got all the spreadsheets you need, the offer letters. You've got a whole load of sort of homework that you're going to be doing throughout that phase. You're going to be submitting your website, your branding for our branding coach to assess, your business plan. So make sure you're on track so our business coach can actually assess that. You're going to be talking to our business coach about your company structure. So you've got that back with your accountant all set up properly. And then very uniquely, in terms of the actual technical ability, we're going to get you to submit or to analyze and submit a complete deal. It might not be one that you're specifically going to actually go for, but it's to demonstrate and to make sure you understand the process. So you're going to put a deal together, a complete package of a whole deal. We call something called block planning. So you're going to look at the layouts, you're going to look at the rights under what we call permitted development to do it. You're going to analyze the deal, and that's going to come in and go through a specialist planning consultant. It's going to go through a structural engineer, an architect, a cost consultant, and a project manager, who then will come back on the on a call with you, on a meeting with you, and actually make sure you've got that right, got the process right. And we do all of that before you feel like we release you into the world. As a university would, it's almost like the exams at the end, but of course they're during the program that we put it out there. After those first 8 weeks, you're going to come along to 4 days. There's 4 months there where you're going to come and spend whole days each month in the room with myself, a business partner in, and we have a planning consultant there every month. And we look at deals that students bring. So students would just rock up and bring a deal and say, I've seen this. Is this something I can do? I've had a go at it. And we might be saying, no, that's wrong because of this, because of that, or it is correct, but you'd be better to look at this. We get through a lot of deals. We also get the students working in groups, doing deals and so on. So after the end of those 6 months, pretty much, we always say, in the nicest possible way, we hope never to see you again. And on the basis of that is, if we've educated you properly, then you're able to go into the world and do what it is we ask you to do. Because as a property CEO, over those 6 months, you are going to be the CEO that's built a team around you. You've built a team of your own funders, project managers, structural engineers, architects, planning consultants, accountants, everything. It's about building and running a team, because it's about being a CEO. Effectively, you've graduated at that point. That's the first 6 months. Now, a lot of students will opt to come on a sort of follow-on with us. So we have a developers club, and so they can extend their program to 12 months. In fact, they can actually roll on in the developers club. So there's a choice of 6 or of 12 months. A lot of people just go for the 12 months straight away. And the developers club is really stepping up a gear, because in that room, we now have a mixture of people doing deals, having done deals, coming out the back end, looking for their second deal. People still, literally just graduated, still trying to get everything together. And in that room, a very similar process. It's a fairly open agenda. It's what questions do you have? What problems do you have? What challenges? What blockages? And what deals have you got going on? And of course, some of those problems now are deals that they've got on site, and they're having problems with their contractor, their architect, or whatever. And in the room there, we have a very specialized team. So every month we'll have a planning consultant, we'll have a commercial funder. So we have funding surgeries, planning consultant surgeries. And we pretty much have, most months, not every month, a full design team. So we'll often have a structural engineer, an architect, cost consultant. We've got the full gambit, project manager in the room. So it's a bit like, it's like living the real world. But of course, what you've got those people that are pretty much giving you the inside track. And so they have this full support over that period, and they can opt to keep coming back to Developers Club. So we're quite happy, as long as we've trained them so they can leave. But if they want to come back and be in the community, which I think a lot of people like, it's the community aspect of it, then they can stay with us as long as they want. I'll just say one other thing as well, which is so important, because what we did about a year, probably 2 years ago, as I said to you, it's by invite only. We have a long discussion with people to make sure that they really want to do this, and we're a good fit for them as well as they being a good fit for us. But development for a lot of people is a step up. A lot of people have this, can I, can't I do it? So we actually set up a 3-day course. We call it Fast Track. It's all the information of all of our programs are on our website if anyone would like to go and have a look at that, they are more than welcome. It's the full details, no smoke and mirrors. It's fairly black and white what it is. The full prospectus of the program's on there, and indeed the prospectus of a 3-day fast track. And the reason we set this up, the 3-day fast track program, was not to teach development in 3 days. You can't do that. It's impossible. But we get people a huge amount of content over 3 days, and we get them to dip their toe in the water, give them a taste of how you find deals, how you find the money, how you find the team, how you put the business together. And we also do some live deal stuff on those 3 days. And our objective within 3 days is either to put you off, okay, so we tell you how difficult it is. It's entirely possible, because a lot of people come on us and they need to change their life. They don't have enough in their pension pot. They want to do something different. They want to earn, they want to go and earn £1 million or something like that. And it's entirely possible, but we tell you over 3 days how difficult it is. And in the nicest way, we'll try and put you off in the nicest way. But what you are going to make a decision in those 3 days is, maybe I'm out, maybe it's not for me, or yes, I am definitely interested. And the point of those 3 days is people fully understand what this journey is like. And then they can go, yeah, I can see the commitment I've got to make to this journey. And if I make that commitment, I can do it as well.
Very nice. That's amazing. So I'd love to know, is this only for people in the UK? I mean, is the coursework surrounding the probably property laws in the UK, or is it something that could translate to a global level later as well?
100% it could later. Okay, so right at this minute, the program is UK based. Okay, because there are certain modules and sections of this program which are UK biased, UK laws. Particularly permitted development rights is one of the things that obviously is absolutely pertinent to what we have in the UK and other countries don't. A huge proportion of the course and the principles of the course are, the principle, Nihal, of being a CEO of a property company, rather than just learning the strategy, about learning how to run a property company, whether you want to do conversion of existing buildings, land assembly, whatever, build residential buildings, build some commercial spaces, which we teach the whole process. I would say probably 85% of the course is transferable anywhere in the world. Okay, there'll be a few subtleties in terms of how certain things are done. I'm not talking about law, but certain cultures will work in certain ways. So there's going to be a few cultural changes, sure. But most of the content and the principles are there. Then, of course, there would be an adjustment on some of the bespoke modules, particularly some of the business structure modules, of course, and some of the more technical ones where laws and legislation is different. And so pretty much it could be, and it definitely it is something that we have been discussing, but at the moment we have decided not to press the button to actually take it, around the world. Yes, translation in certain countries, it will work perfectly well as well. So it is possible to do, but at the moment we are UK focused.
Great. So I mean, this is just out of curiosity and my own interest. So I'd love to know, what is the average age group of people who enroll for the course? Like you said, it's invite only, so who are invited in to do the course, and how young or how old does someone need to be? Okay,
well, I'll give you the range, and then I'll tell you where most people will sit. Okay. In fact, I'll do it the other way around. I'm going to tell you most people are probably 40 to 60. Okay. That's probably the range. So we would generally attract more mature people. And the reason for that is not that people are immature. I don't mean that, but I'm just trying to describe that age group.
I got it, yeah.
Generally, people get to a point, often for some people their 40s, some people their 60s, when they realize that they don't have enough. They don't have enough time, they don't have enough money to retire, whatever. They're in a job they do not like, and people get to that point where, I mean, some people have to. Some people, certainly on the other side of 50, are starting to go, well, hang on a minute, my pension pot is not there. And for a lot of people, obviously, in the UK right now, that is a major concern. And where else do you turn? And of course, property, and I've been in all sorts of industries. I've invested in all sorts of property industries outside of property, and there's not really anywhere else that relatively safely, because property is a secure asset, that you can get into and make six-figure sums, 100, 200, 300,000. We have students making £300,000 profit out of their first project. that's never done it before. Now that's life-changing. You know, you've only got to do 2 or 3 of those. You've got £1 million coming in your pension pot. For some people, that might be enough. That might be enough top up of what they've got. So it's those more mature people that tend to sort of have that sort of realization in life that, wow, I need to do something about it. And time, I think, is the big thing. I always say to people, Nia, I said, if you work with us and if you're coachable and if you listen, I'll make sure by the time you've done this program and you're successful that you're very rich in life. Okay, I want you to be as rich as you could ever imagine. Because a lot of people go, oh wow, and I go, yeah, no, but I don't mean financially. And they go, what? And I go, in time. Because that's the other great thing about property development. If you do this well, it's highly leveraged. It's not a full-time job. Where else can you work a few days a week once you get going, up and running, and stick to small scale, okay, highly leveraged in the way we teach, and earn 200,000 or 300,000 a year? It's nowhere. And time is the most important thing that we need. So it's that age group that often tend to sort of that aspiration and that dream is more for them. And I think as well, you do need a bit of gravitas to for people to take you seriously in this, and that helps. And of course, people have then reached a certain level, and the skill sets that are required. We always say these are the skill sets. You have management skills, and most people, by the time they're over 40, have probably managed a department or some division or a business or whatever. You have organizational skills. They probably honed those fairly wisely. Decision skills, because you can't just sit on the fence. You've got to, like the cabinet minister. All the advisors are going to come up to that cabinet minister and they've got to make the decision. So you can't just go, oh, I'm not really sure. You have to have those skills. And of course, they get honed as we get older. And most importantly, the fourth skill, which is the most important skill, to be the CEO of any company, is people skills. And of course, as we get older, our people skills mature a lot. And we're able to deal with situations and so on. Yeah, one of our students who is an ex-police officer, gave up working in the force as a detective. She said, I'm banging on doors where I know there's a gun on the other side. She's a single mum, and she said, and I was paid whatever I was paid, which wasn't a lot, she told us. And she said, why? And I'm working unsociable hours. I've got 2 kids that she had at the time as a single mum, and she's now gone out and, she's earning a 6-figure sum, out of her first deal. It was life-changing. Her first deal is probably equivalent to 6-7 years worth of salary. She's done it in 2 or 3 years. So very life-changing from that aspect. So those skills. Now, some people have them older, as young and older. Our youngest student is 18. Now, I would say that would be an exception. And actually, she's 18 and her father is supporting her on it. And so she was actually this week at one of our academy days in the room, which we hold those up in Birmingham. And her father attended with her. So her father is supporting her, but very entrepreneurial, very young, very confident. And I think would do well. She would do well because she's sort of almost unhindered by things. Certainly some of her skills will need to be enhanced by her father's support. Our oldest student, mid-70s. Okay.
Wow.
Mid-70s. And I think, mid-70s, you wouldn't know it. You definitely wouldn't know it. As long as I look that good when I'm in my mid-70s, I'll be fine. And we've got a few at that sort of age. Okay. But and I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think there's probably a combination of still want to do something, still got plenty of energy, and wow, wouldn't this be fun? And a lot of those are probably property people. And by that, they might be within the industry. We get a lot of sort of architects, structural engineers, project managers, industry people wanting to go on the other side, as it were, and earn the money rather than just the salary. I always said there's a difference between making money and earning money, and they want to make it rather than earn it. And a lot of those might be landlords, buy-to-let landlords who are saying, no, I want to change. And we get a huge amount of that. 2022 has been a big transition of landlords knocking on our door, wanting to talk about this. And I think the other part, but I think this is much more personal for them, so I wouldn't speak out of turn, is a realization that pension pot and that legacy they're going to leave to children, grandchildren is not anywhere near where they want it to be. And now they could actually do something about it.
You've been in this field for almost 4 decades now. So I'd love to know what has changed from how it was when you started off versus now.
I started on the drawing board at the age of 16, and learned to train to be a structural engineer. How has the property industry changed? It's changed in lots and lots of ways. The industry has had a lot more legislation all over. all over. I mean, if we look at things like Grenfell, what a sad state of affairs that was. But things like that, and going right back, some older, viewers, readers will understand things like Ronan Point, which was a huge collapse many years ago. Things like that changed the industry almost forever, and rightly so. Grenfell has now meant that the control of fire and understanding of fire and fire movement has been enhanced. Unfortunately, it's sad that it takes something like that, as devastating as that, to change the industry, but it does. And it's been lots of those things, some major, some minor, over the years. So legislation has always, it gets tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. We in terms of the consultants within this world, their professional indemnity insurance has gone up and up and up and up and covered wider and wider, problems. We're just sort of following in the footsteps of the Americans. We're much keener to sue someone. The business used to be, I would say, fairly closed. Back in the day, going back many years, consultants, particularly, I'm a structural engineer. We, a part of our institutions, we were not allowed to advertise. Okay, we could not. We had to have a brass plaque on the wall. That was it. Nothing else. Okay, you couldn't advertise. I could not have done this. I could have not have done this many years ago as a structural engineer. But the industry's opened up in a good way, and it's tightened up. It's probably in a good way as well. I think what's happened over the last, dare I say, 10, 15, maybe 20 years, 20 years probably, the ability for others to get into the industry has opened up significantly. And that's really started with what I would call the sort of domestic end, having some buy-to-lets, having some alternative investments and income streams. And so, there's a huge amount of people that have become landlords. I mean, unfortunately, the average buy-to-let landlord in this country owns 1.5 properties. So the reality for most of those earning £300 or £400 profit out of each is not life-changing. So, but of course, it is something. It's a long-term investment. So a lot of people have got into that market, and there is some terrific education out there in that marketplace, and the doors have been opened. In more recent years, it's been opened for property development. I'm not going to say badly, because that would be inappropriate, but I would say not comprehensively. Okay, and I think in some ways, one of the problems, property development is a very different animal to getting a buy-to-let. Once you've done one or two buy-to-lets, you understand what's about. Most property development projects take 2 to 3 years. And if you've only been in the industry 5 years, you've not seen many projects. And there are thousands of moving parts. So the knowledge you need is extensive. To teach someone, the knowledge you need is extensive to teach someone appropriately and in the right way, in the way we teach as a CEO. And so I think what's been great is that others before us, paved some of the way to get people into property development, and they probably do it fairly well. And I think then that we found an opportunity in the marketplace which wasn't fulfilled, was to do it comprehensively by someone that's been in the industry 40 years and is professionally qualified. There's no one else doing that. And I think what that's enabled us to do in the industry, and I think to answer that question, what the biggest change is that property development, and I'm going to keep emphasizing, which is obviously the title of our book is about small scale property development. It's made it accessible. So we've got restaurateurs. As I said, we've got police officers, IT consultants, ex-bank managers, all now developing properties. I've got an airline pilot developing properties who lives abroad. We have overseas students who live abroad and developing at arm's length. All of these people changing or wanting to change their lives. So I think the biggest change is it's become accessible, and that is fantastic news. It's great for us. Personally, for me, it's a huge honor, and it's a massive satisfaction and a buzz to train someone to change their life and earn 6-figure sums. That's huge. So I think the biggest thing is become more accessible over those 40 years.
Apart from all of this, you're also an author. So can you tell me a little bit about your books? So there's Industrial to Residential Conversions, and then there's the Guide to Small Scale Property Development. So please tell me about these.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the big things is to say, why write a book? Okay, why put a book out there? Well, as I said to you, in terms of the way our program works, the last thing we want, I mean, everyone wants to do something different in their life. A lot of people want their life to be different in 5 to 10 years' time, and they want to change things. The worst thing in the world is to get someone that misunderstands or is a little bit dreamy and goes, yeah, I'm going to sign up for this program, I'm going to get on it, and I'm going to do it. We very much want people to understand, okay, this is hard work. There are risks involved, okay? I always say to people, if you made £250,000 a year, if I could train you to make £250,000 a year, would that change your life? And most people go, yes, it would. And I say, then if you lost £250,000 a year, would that change your life? And they go, yeah, it would. So there's risk. You've got to get it right, okay? And I think the important thing is we want to get as much out there for people to absorb and consider and understand, is this the journey they want to go on? Because I think a lot of the problem, Nihar, is that people see property development as big shopping centres and big hospitals and big office blocks. Well, it's not. It's not when we talk about small scale. And they also think, well, hang on, if we're building some residential, well, then Barrett's and Persimmon and Bellways are out there. Interestingly enough, about 30% of the homes that used to be delivered in this country were delivered by small scale property developers. But that's disappeared. It's about 12%. And we're falling way short of the 300,000 houses that we want to build a year. We're only building 200 at most. So the marketplace needs to have more people coming into it. So the government are massively supporting it. The government are massively supporting small-scale property development with permitted development rights, which is the conversion of brownfield land, existing buildings, into residential without the need for floor planning. That's where a lot of the risk gets minimised. So it's a terrific opportunity, which has really been enhanced over the last few years, and particularly fairly recently. It's a really good place to be. But of course, you need to understand that. And for a lot of people, they don't always have maybe the time or maybe the initial commitment to go, I want to jump on even a 3-day course, and spend some money to do that. So we sort of, okay, well, let's put some books out there. Now, to start with, we actually, we chose to write a book on industrial conversions because industrial conversions are just not understood in the market. And we're talking about converting what we call light industrial buildings, little industrial units that are often hidden in and around residential areas. And you have rights to convert those, into residential buildings without full planning permission. The government's supporting it, and you can get all the funding you need, and they're great projects to do. So first of all, we put together a few years back a book just on industrial conversions. We thought it was interesting. We thought it was a bit of fun. It was interesting. The book also talked about being a developer. So it very much talked about the process of being a developer with this sort of specialized slant. We then had a lot of call for a more generalized book, in development. So that's when we decided to put together, so Ian and myself, we're co-authors of that book. We put together the Guide to Small Scale Property Development. We really wanted to focus on the small scale. We really wanted people to understand what it was about. So the book was put together as a very easy toe in the water to and consume within your own time. It's Audible out there as well. So, it's on Kindle, it's Audible, it's a hardback. You can consume it in the easiest way possible. And you can then get a feeling for what development's like. And we've written the book, it's a light read. It's a bit of fun. It's not heavy. It's not too technical. We tell a story of a couple of people in the book. And it's a nice way of getting a message across. There's a story in there. And I won't give any spoilers as such, but there's a story in there about two people that go on two separate property journeys, and the differences of their success over a period of 10 years is stark. It is absolutely amazing. A lot of people go, really? Have you fudged those figures? Have you airbrushed those figures? No, that's the reality of what you can do in small scale property development. And put together in a story, I think, just makes the read easy. You can't learn development out of that book, but one thing we do talk about is the process. I talked about earlier in the interview about the 8 pillars and the process, like the franchise manual of the Costas and the Subway and McDonald's type thing. We talk about that. We try and make sure you understand that there is a system and a process. And the objective of the book is hopefully for you to get to the end of that book and decide to, one or two things. Either interesting read, but no thank you very much, or interesting read, I think I could do that. Let's take another step. So it's really that sort of initial, dipping your toe in the water, and that's the reason for putting it out there.
That's nice. That's wonderful. So what is probably one piece of advice that you would give a novice in the field, like someone who wants to get in, but like you said, so probably the first advice would be to read the book and then the 3-day course? Or is there something else that you'd like to add?
I would say the first advice, if you want to get into anything, so the first advice is don't just give it a go. Okay, you can sometimes give, and I don't advise you do this, okay, but you can sometimes give buy to let it go, because people go, I can understand that. I can decorate a house, I can get in there, I could do one up. I would say there's some really good education out there by companies that can steer and guide you properly on that. So you do it far more successfully, but most people would be reasonably successful at that. I went to, just to explain this, I went to do a presentation once at an event, and on social media the night before, someone said, oh, you can Google everything you need to know about being a property developer and doing small scale development. Okay, you don't need to go on an expensive course. Okay, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I Googled some other stuff that night, and I went to this meeting and I said about this point, and I said, I don't know if they're in the room, I don't know the people, but do you know, I said, I Googled last night open heart surgery. Okay, and there are videos, there are downloads, there's all sorts that tells you what it's about. Would you let me operate on you? And of course people in the room went, no way, you could kill us. Well, of course I could. But as I said just now, if you lost 250,000, that could kill you, certainly emotionally. So I think the biggest advice is just do not give development a go. Do it properly. And where to start? Definitely the book. Okay, read that book. It's the only book that I think is a light enough read that will give you a feel of whether this is for you or not. Specifically around small scale property development, which I think is so important. I would say read that and then decide after that. Okay, people can jump onto our website. We give a lot of free content out. We do a weekly webinar show, a 45-minute, quite punchy, informative show every Thursday evening. People can go onto YouTube, listen to back copies of that. You can immerse yourself in a bit of that, pop in and around our website. There's lots of free content. But I think, the book is a great place to start. Then maybe come on your 3-day event after that. That dips your toe in the water and you can really decide. So
what is one thing that you probably wish everyone knew about your field?
Well, what do they know about my field? One thing I wish people would. So we always ask, one of the things we ask, Neha, is if you're going to get trained by us. Now, the great thing about the 3-day event that Ian and I do live, we do it's an online event, but we do it live. We want people, because this is a very personable business. Okay, I tell you, people skills are the most important. And people really got to know whether we are the right people to train them. And we try and train with humor. I try and have a bit of fun. People who read the book will understand that. People that watch some of our past YouTube videos, or people that see me speak on stage, I try and have a bit of fun because I think humor helps us educate. The benefit of coming on the 3-day event is you get to know us. The thing I always ask people is, are you coachable? And so the one thing that I really tell people to do, and I really want them to do, okay, is use those people skills. You cannot be a developer hidden behind a laptop in your office. It's a people business. Always has been, always will be. That's not changed over the 40 years, okay? It's just now more accessible. And so what I always say, and the biggest thing I always say to people, if you want to be successful about this, apart from the education, but you can have all the education in the world, but if you don't do this thing that I'm going to tell you, you won't be successful. So the thing that I want people to do and learn and put into practice the most is immerse yourself in the industry. Get in the industry, surround yourself with people, socialize with them, chat to them, talk to them, engage with them. Immerse yourself in the industry. With that knowledge, you will be successful. I think a lot of people out there want to or need to change their life. Okay, those that need, we always say, to do this journey, you need the purpose. You need to understand the reason you're doing what you're doing. And I always said it's either pushing or pulling you. Okay, if it's pulling you, it's because you want to do something. We've got one of our students here, just doesn't need the money, but is of an age where they said, I still want to work, and wants to donate over half of everything they make to a certain charity. Okay. I won't mention the charity because it's not right, but they want to put this charity. They told me the charity and it's close to their heart, and I know why. And so they have something that I would say is pulling them. It's making them do it. Okay. The other people is something that's pushing them. It's pushing them forward. It's they don't have enough in the pension pot. You know, they want to get out of that job. They want to change their life. They don't have enough time with their family. And of course, time moves on very, very fast. And I think then the one thing perhaps that we didn't discuss is when is a good time. Okay. Is now a good time? Was a good time 2 years ago? Is it in 2 years' time? Well, the answer is always now. Okay, property development is a great opportunity. People talk about recession. There's a lot of talk about recession at the moment. We're not going to discuss that today, or what my opinion would or wouldn't be. But actually, even if there was, that's when property developers make a terrific amount of opportunity because they buy right because the market's suppressed. But in any market, doing it right, you're successful. The worst thing in the world you can do is I always say to people, look, if you're unsure, what do you end up doing? You pop down to your local, builders merchants, you buy yourself a fence and you sit on it. Well, don't do that. Don't procrastinate. If you want to get on with something, get the right support and do it. Just do it. And the famous slogan of one manufacturer out there, just do it, and do it with the right support. But actually, just do it. And right now in 2022 is a terrific opportunity. I know there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. I know there's lots of stuff, with changes in government and unfortunate circumstances going on around the world. But there always has been, and there always will be. There's always been problems. We've had Brexit, we've had COVID. There'll be something else. There always was, there always will be. Just do it. People think about it. We'll start the journey now. And even just reading the book, just start the journey.
It's amazing advice. It was actually such a great conversation.
I've enjoyed it talking to you today. So thank you for inviting us along. It's been a pleasure.